What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 140. Hope we love a nice round whole number. And our first episode of 2026. Cope, hard to believe that we last recorded right before New Year's Eve. And here we are recording on the night of January 15th. But we're back. I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. Next to me, as I mentioned, my co-host, Jay Copestick, the one and only. Cope, how many games are you up to now this year?
I'm at 28. And
Wow.
it's weird because it doesn't like seem like that much, which I know is weird, you know what I mean? But you see like, you know, Jaden Daly, Riley Frayne, Sam Fetterman, those guys are putting in work. But the thing is, I look at my schedule and if I block out everything right, and again, like you need to take care of yourself. You don't want to get burned out. I was feeling tired last night. I will say last night coming home from St. Joe's Bonaventure, I was a little tired, but I block out my schedule. And you know, stuff happens. Bills Broncos is this week. Probably not going to go to LaSalle, St. Bonaventure because I've already seen the Bonnies and the games are going to overlap. So I'm probably going to miss that one. So I'm going to cross that one off. Like stuff could happen. Maybe there's not space, but if all goes to plan, Kyle, and I get to a conference tournament where I can bang out multiple games in a day, I can go to the NCAA tournament in Philadelphia Thursday, Friday, or I think Thursday, Sunday, bang out a couple games.
It'll be Thursday, Saturday, wouldn't it?
Whatever the breakdown is, we could be up around 70 by the end of the season. But sorry, as per usual with me, a very long answer to your very short question. Okay. We hit 28. 28 was last night.
There we go. 70 is an unfathomable number for me. I'm at 10 right now. I will be happy if I hit 20. I'm going to 2 this weekend. I'm going to be at that LaSalle St. Bonaventure game, Cope. I'm also going to be at Temple FAU. I think you're also going to be at Temple FAU as well. So we're creeping up. We'll see what conference tournaments brings. That can help skew the numbers a little bit. The multi-game events. So, yeah. Cope, we have a lot to get into because, like I said, we've recorded in about 16, 17 days. Can't really do the motion for that, but it's been a little bit. So why don't we get into it? We're going to get to your Cope's quick hitters first or soon. But first, we are going to talk about something. It's a little bit of a somber topic of conversation because this week, I'm sure you all have seen, if you're watching this, the news that kind of shook Temple Universe, college basketball universe, and that was their assistant coach, Bill Courtney, passing away at the age of 55. Just joined Temple staff this year, was formerly working with Adam Fisher at University of Miami. He was the head coach of Cornell for a number of years. I think there's a couple others. He was on the George Mason staff in 2004 when they went to the Final Four under Jim Larrañaga. He was Miami's interim head coach after Coach Larrañaga retired. A basketball lifer, somebody who's been around for a long time, and Cope, I don't think you ever met him. I certainly never met him, but from all accounts that we've seen over the last few days, an incredible human being as well, which I think is the most important thing. Forget all the basketball. I know that's why we're talking about him, is because of the college basketball and the Big Five connection with him, being on Temple staff this year, but sudden and unfathomable loss. So we give our thoughts and prayers and condolences to the Courtney family, first and foremost, the Temple Athletics family, any of the universities and anyone he has impacted in his college basketball career. So we just want to start with that. Cope, any thoughts for you?
Yeah, absolutely horrific stuff to happen mid-season, such a traumatic event. And, you know, I want to credit to those guys for even playing last night. Having to get on a plane and go to Memphis, you know, like that day, essentially, just absolutely horrific, but great to see the outpouring of support, as it always is in the coaching world. Anytime something, unfortunately, you know, like this happens or somebody gets sick or something like that. You know, Ryan Odom tearing up at a presser after they had a big win the other night, I believe it was over Louisville. Tony Skinn, like he was a player on that team, to see him talk about it, but just awful, man. Awful for something like this to happen anyway, but to happen in the middle of a season where everybody's pouring in so much time and so much effort to this and, you know, driven to win and have higher goals, to have an event like this happen. I mean, it's awful and it's totally unfathomable. So I hope everybody at Temple is doing all right, given the the circumstances, and again, to even go out there last night, Kyle, they deserve a lot of props for even playing that game. Had they not, nobody would have blamed them. I mean, in the NBA, I know the Warriors had an assistant pass away. I think it was 2 years ago. They canceled that game. Nobody batted an eye at it. I mean, for stuff like this to happen, you push all the wins, the stats, the basketball by the wayside. Just an awful, awful thing to happen at Temple, and we're certainly thinking of everybody there.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of a weird transition, tough transition to getting back to basketball here, but we just wanted to, mention those words and send our condolences, like we said. So, Cope, to get back to the basketball, why don't you grab that ball, run that break? We do have some quick hitters we want to go over to start off this episode.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to transition from that, Kyle, but we'll do our best here. First, how about the transfer portal, Kyle? Hate to talk about it in January as we're in the thick of conference play and there's a lot going on, but a common sense thing done by the NCAA for basketball, at least, it is a 15 day period after the championship game, which it just seems like common sense, Kyle. I mean, why should a Kevin Keats a couple years ago with NC State, or a Brian Dutcher with San Diego State, or Nate Oates at Alabama 2 years ago, when you are preparing for a Final Four, for the biggest games in some of these people's lives, everything that goes into it, you fly there early, there's media days, there's a bunch of extracurriculars, all based around the game. Should you have to worry about getting kids on campus that you might not even get, that you might not even have on your team next year? You're worried about transfers, just getting like setting up visits and stuff. And unfathomable that was ever a thing. So there's going to be a 15-day period that opens up after the championship game where the portal is going to open, and there's going to be all your speed dating and your visits and stuff like that. I think that's a total move in the right direction. I don't know why this was not done already. But regardless, Kyle, it's a big step in the right direction for this. Also, with head coaching changes, which I think it's important to go over this rule because we had a situation, of course, in the Billy Lang leaving for the Knicks situation with St. Joseph's where this could have been a thing. So this is directly from NCAA's website. When a head coaching change occurs, a 15-day period will open 5 days after the new head coach is hired or publicly announced. Therefore, the new head coach has time to meet with everybody, see who he wants to keep. There can be a decision made with the players there if they decide to move elsewhere. If a new head coach is not announced within 30 days of the previous head coach's departure, and the 31st day after the head coach's departure is after the championship game, a 15-day window will open for those players to make a move if that is after the 15 days granted with the championship game. So the additional head coach departure window is available only after the basketball transfer portal window opens through January 2nd. So there's some clarity there as when guys can move, because it might not happen. Okay. Like we saw with St. Joe's, that happened a couple of weeks before the season started. It might not always align with the tournament and coaches leaving that way. So some clarity around that. I know when a head coach leaves, there was always a period for those players to decide if they wanted to stay under an interim or not, have a chance to leave, red shirt, so on, and so forth. So some more clarity for that. And then lastly, Kyle, with mid-year transfers, because you're seeing international kids do it now, there was the whole craze about the Russian big man that Oklahoma brought in at the winter break in the semester to start playing for Oklahoma. This is a basketball rule for mid-year transfers, Kyle, not eligible to compete at a second school if they enrolled at an NCAA school during the first academic term, whether they competed there or not. No, that doesn't necessarily apply to the international teams, but I remember, I think this was 2 years ago, Kyle, Naquan Tomlin at Kansas State. He was removed from the team and then ended up playing at Kansas later that semester. I don't know if he was technically enrolled at the time at Kansas State of when he was dismissed, but kind of weird to see dismissed from one team in August or whatever. Then he's playing in Memphis at the semester break, for the spring semester. That will not be happening again. Because I thought that was just an odd situation the way it happened anyway. Because Naquan Tomlin was a good player. It's Memphis just gets to add somebody even if he didn't play. So some more rules. So this is all good for the game, Kyle. Honestly, more rules,
Common
more
sense. This should have
guardrails
happened a while ago.
is what the sport needs. So that's that on the transfer portal front. Kyle, we had some big news today. So there was a large sports betting indictment that actually is going through Philadelphia, going through the Eastern District of Pennsylvania there. Bunch of guys named in this. A sports betting scheme that unfortunately trickled its way into college basketball after starting in the Chinese Basketball Association. We've known about a handful of these guys, Kyle, but there was 4 active players mentioned, 2 of which are suspended, one of which was Simeon Cottle at Kennesaw State, other Carlos Hart at Eastern Michigan. So there's some active players. There's also some former players that we have heard of, that we've seen in the news prior to this, but there was some Big Five connections here. So first, Kyle, I want to go over is Mac Etienne. Obviously at LaSalle last year under Fran Dunphy. However, he did not commit these violations at LaSalle. There was another incident involving LaSalle that we'll go over. But Mac Etienne, this happened when he was at DePaul. And it happened with 2 other fellow DePaul players, and Jalen Terry and Deshaun Nelson, who were at Eastern Michigan last year and not only involved in point shaving and fixing games when they were at DePaul, they also did it at Eastern Michigan last year, where they both transferred to at the same time, conveniently. But not good, some of these allegations, Kyle. Not only were they throwing games, but texting the bookie, so to speak, or texting the bagman, if you will, during halftime of some games. There was a game where they threw against Georgetown, and Georgetown only ended up winning by 1. Like this was really, really messy, Kyle, when you look at some of these. And then you look at some of the, how about this, Kyle? You look at the game footage. They had game footage of 2 guys at Buffalo playing, blatantly just throwing the game away. I mean, bad passes and not trying on defense and just boneheaded mistakes. It was crazy. And some of the DePaul stuff was no better. Deshaun Nelson in the game where DePaul scored 39 points with under a minute to go, or regardless of time, end of game, it's 70-39. It's out of hand. Seton Hall's killing DePaul. Grabs a rebound off what was there was a missed free throw. He grabbed the rebound and threw it back to the ref, thinking that there was going to be another free throw. Ref moves out of the way. It's out of bounds off DePaul. You see stuff like that, Kyle.
Free throw.
Kyle, you will. There is people. There's watchdog accounts that we've gone over. It is people's jobs, their livelihoods is to catch this. You will not outsmart them. You just won't. It's not worth throwing away your eligibility and a pro career. But the teams like this and small schools, we saw Mississippi Valley State in on it, being preyed on for $10,000 to $15,000 for schools that might not have NIL. Kids see this. And they're preyed upon almost by game fixers. But we'll get into LaSalle here, Kyle. So the fixers, which included Antonio Blakeney, who you remember, Kyle, played at LSU with Ben Simmons when they were horrendous that year, where the 2 of them were there, and then had a stint not only in the G League, he played at Summer League a couple times when I was there, played for the Chicago Bulls as well. They tried to recruit people from LaSalle to participate in this. So the game in question, February 21st, 2024, LaSalle hosted St. Bonaventure at then Tom Gola Arena, and of course, at 20th and Olney. Bonnies were favored by 5.5 points in the first half. Not only did they not cover the first half, they did not cover the game, as LaSalle ended up winning. And there was at least approximately $247,000 on the Bonnies to cover the first half, including a $30,000 wager that was placed at Live Casino down at the sports complex. Rivers Casino was also in this as well, Kai, with bets being placed there. It just is shocking to see this like so close to home in such a big scheme. But also, Kyle, Elijah Gray, he didn't commit any wrongdoing at Temple when he was there last year. Transfers to Wisconsin this year. He's released before the season due to events that occurred before his enrollment at Wisconsin. It turns out they took place at Fordham before he even got to Temple. He took a bribe, or at least was offered one, 10 to 15K. He only had 3 points in a game against Duquesne. They failed to cover the full game spread. He didn't get paid out, but he was involved in it as well, from that standpoint, with large bets being placed on this Duquesne game to beat Fordham that didn't end up happening. There's text messages, Antonio Blakeney telling his group, his syndicate to load up and bet on Duquesne. This can all be tracked. You're not just getting, this doesn't evaporate, Kyle. Like iCloud, Instagram, DMs, like they will find you for stuff like this. So really, really unfortunate with how many guys that this was, another Big Five connection. George Halkovich up at Buffalo. This happened with a couple players on one of his teams. The DePaul thing, though, just messy. I know I touched on it, but you have three guys in it who there's FaceTimes and there's texts literally at halftime of games of this happening. Not to mention that you also have during a game, Mac Etienne like texting like, "Yo, we're not going to give this guy the ball. This guy's hooping, but he's playing well. We're not going to give him the ball." Like just blatant, Kyle. Blatant stuff here of throwing games. And the thing is that DePaul team, Kyle, went 3-28. I mean, they were horrible. Horrible that team was. And it turns out they were throwing a lot of these. They weren't that good anyway, but blatantly throwing these games and it's wild, man. It's wild. Yeah, ETN texted defendant during the game and assured him DePaul players involved in the scheme were keeping the ball away from the player that was playing well and preventing him from scoring. Keep the plan to get the bag.
It's insane.
It's crazy, crazy, unfathomable stuff. And then I want to pull up one more thing here because CJ Hines, of course, has not appeared in a game just yet at Temple. There was prior allegations for him and his teammate Amar Knox, who I believe is at Eastern Kentucky right now, who I also believe is being held out of competition. This was at Alabama State last year. Of course, the Hornets under Tony Madlock ended up making the tournament. They won a game in the first four. These guys got caught too, and for that reason, they're not playing at their respective schools, including, of course, CJ Hines sitting at Temple. So this happened last year during the 24-25 season. And he was in. There's a couple other players at Alabama State that are not involved, but they were involved. Actually, one of the guys, Sean Fulcher, was at Buffalo. He was also at Alabama State when this happened. So he was caught at a couple different institutions here. But CJ Hines caught up with this as well. Crazy. It spans so many different teams at low levels. I think this is perhaps a one-off thing, Kyle, when the hammer gets dropped down like this. It's at small schools preying on kids that don't make NIL. You're not going to get, a couple years ago, Hunter Dickinson was making that money. AJ DeBanza making $7.5 million. They don't need 10 to 15K to throw games and something that could throw away their whole career. They're preying on these kids who this could be a cash grab for them that they otherwise wouldn't get. It's unfortunate that it happened. It is going to be in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia where it'll be tried and everything. But so many guys, current players, it's crazy. That throwing games in the Chinese Basketball Association. There's the text that Antonio Blakeney sent to somebody who placed a bet at Rivers Casino that said nothing guaranteed in this life but death taxes in Chinese basketball. A whole messy situation, Kyle. Whole messy situation. It's kind of hard to quantify in a couple minutes here or put into words. I try to go over just the stuff that apply to the Big Five, but LaSalle, no wrongdoing. Mac Etienne, the wrongdoing was at DePaul. It was not at LaSalle. He left for a pro career this year. I'm not really sure what happened there. Probably nothing will come out of that. Now that this is a thing, Elijah Gray was prior to Temple. CJ Hines prior to Temple. All of this stuff now. There was no wrongdoing by any member institutions of the Big Five, Kyle. But still so messy for a sport that we love. That gambling's introduced, prop bets should not be allowed. They're introduced, and they're preying on kids for a payday. It's very, very unfortunate that all this happened, and I'm sure there'll be more coming out about this with perhaps arrests and stuff like that. Now, this is a whole big thing, but we'll move on, Kyle, for the sake of time here before we spend an hour talking about this. Our last quick hitter, Kyle. Odd situation here. Some player news out of Villanova, and that was Tafari Gapar and Villanova parted ways. He had a message on Instagram that I'm going to read here, just at least a shorter excerpt of it and not the whole thing. He claims he took a mental health absence and he was allowed to take it. He spent some time away. He lives in New Zealand. He went home. It's not like me or you, Kyle, who can get down to Villanova in 25 minutes. It will take some time for that to happen. Anyway, his message here, this is a part of it on Instagram. He said, I communicated openly with medical professionals, staff, and coaches. I was told it was okay to take a short period to focus on my mental well-being. During that time, I remained in near constant communication with the coaching staff who knew I remained committed to this program. At no point did I claim I was leaving or walking away from the team. Asking for help should never be mistaken for quitting. Played in 9 games this year for Villanova, averaged 2.9 points and 2.9 rebounds, averaged a little over 16 minutes a game. He did miss a couple games. You know, it's what, like, there was some news with him as well as far as getting hurt. There was a quote where Willard was basically saying in the presser, like, you know, one guy doesn't want to practice because his toe hurts. And all signs kind of pointed back to Tafara for being that. But regardless, Kyle, like, this is very, very unfortunate. It's kind of hard. There wasn't anything else on this. There wasn't really a giant statement from Villanova or anybody asked to expand on this. It just kind of seemed like they parted ways. And then you see this from Tafara, and it I don't know, Kyle. I don't really know who to believe here or what the actual truth is. We don't know that. Willard hasn't been asked about that, asked to expand on that. But bottom line here is, Kyle, Tafara Gapar and Villanova parted ways. Don't see that being corrected this year. Him coming back seems to have been a split here. Any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's always said, like, when there's instances, not instances like this, but when there's instances where there's two sides to a story, which there's always two sides to a story, that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. There's one story, there's another story, and then there's the truth. It's probably the case here too. It seems like, though, with some of the social media reaction that happened in, the last couple of weeks or so, since this has happened, that maybe it's possible that the story lies more on Tafara Gapari's side. We don't know, though. We can't speculate it. But if that is true, it's not a good look. It's not a good look, Cope. I got to be honest with you. We've talked about mental health on this show before. I've talked about it on podcasts that I've had before. Very important thing. I understand that he was hurt. He wanted to go back home. He wanted to take some breakaway. I could see why maybe that would be frustrating for a program to not have a player that especially one that you're paying. I don't know how much he was getting paid, but he was probably getting paid. He was coming over from Maryland. Whatever amount of money it was, to at least want them around. I understand that, but it's not like this doesn't happen in professional sports too. So I hope it's not the case, because I don't think mental health should be ignored, especially for a college kid. I know he was a senior, I think, or is a senior, I think. So, I know an older college player, but still a college player. Nonetheless, you're talking about a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, whatever, how old he is. It's a young person. Not so much younger than you and I, but still a young person. You know what I mean? That's going through a time in their life that is not formative, but is an important one. So I just hope that it's not the way it seems, and maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle there, because if it's not, then I think it's a bigger issue that we don't need to speculate on right now. We've gone a little over probably what we want to go over right now before we get into the meat and bones, and hopefully not have an hour and 10 episode for you guys again. But I hope it's not true, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But Cope, why don't we move on? It's almost too much to even talk about just a game by game breakdown. So why don't we go team by team? I'm going to go first for a team that I am quite high on right now, and we'll talk about each team and kind of take the temperature of where we are halfway through the month of January. We're 6 weeks from March, which is a thing to hear, to say. I mean, come on now, we're 6 weeks from March. A good chunk into conference play here, but not quite all the way, of course. I'm going to go over the Temple Owls, Cope. The Temple Owls have been a solidly consistent team, and I know they obviously had the tough loss in Memphis on Wednesday, 55-53. Obviously, after an emotional, probably 48 hours from them, of course, as we mentioned, after the passing of their assistant coach, Bill Courtney, they still put up a hell of a fight against a Memphis team that isn't as good as years past, but still quality for the conference. Their first conference loss of the season, their first time they lost in, I believe it was 7 games. So even though they did lose this one game, they did pick up wins against Charlotte was the night we recorded our last episode on December 30th, but they picked up a win against UTSA, who is horrible. No offense to UTSA, but they're 345 in the country right now in Ken Palm. It's a bad team. And East Carolina, who's not too great in their own right. Memphis was the best team they played in a little bit, and even though they didn't win, they showed a lot of fight. I'm still high on this team. I think they can finish top 5 or so in this conference, Cope. I think that they are probably the second most consistent team in the Big Five. I'm sure you'll hit on the first one in just a second here, but I like this Temple team. They're still taking care of the basketball. 3-point shooting's pretty good. We've talked about some of the guys, Jordan Mason, who's been their facilitator, Darian Ford, who's been their scorer, Aiden Tobias, and Gavin Griffiths has actually been getting national attention for how he's played. He had, before the Memphis game, he had 11 blocks in a 2-game span against East Carolina and UTSA. Very impressive. He's shooting over 40% from 3. This is a good team. I'm not saying it's a great team. I'm not saying they're going to win the conference. I'm not saying they're going to the NCAA tournament. But Cope, even though they played mostly competition that they should be beating, they played Memphis very close as well, too. And again, we talk about moral victories sometimes on this podcast. I'm not saying that this is one of them, but considering the circumstances, too, you kind of, they had a chance to win that game. They were right there, and a tough place to play. A place they haven't won since the 2016-2017 season, since I was a senior in high school. So, credit to them for even getting on the court, like you mentioned earlier, and flying to Memphis and being there for that. But I'm high on this Temple team. They got a tough one on Sunday against Florida Atlantic, who's also one of the better teams in the conference at home. Ken Pop's projecting that a 1-point loss right now. But then they're at Rice, at UTSA, home against Charlotte. 2 of those 3 teams they've beaten already. I think this is a good opportunity for them to stack some wins. And listen, right now, Ken Palm has them projected 10-8 in the conference. They're 3-1 so far. Hopefully, it can be a little bit better than that 10-8. But I think this Temple team is going to firmly make the American tournament, which over the last couple of years, well, maybe last year they were in it. The year before, they were the 13th seed and they made the finals of the AAC tournament. So then the AAC tournament. So I think they're squarely in it, Cope. I think this team is very solid.
Yeah, absolutely. They're way better than, I have to eat crow. I mean, I'm going to knock on wood here that I don't jinx them, but I picked them 9th, right above that line. And with Darian Ford, with now Jordan Mason, with Aiden Tobias, and with Gavin Griffiths, like, they have 4 guys that can hurt you offensively. Really good ones too. That start for them. I do worry about the depth a little bit of with they've had some injuries, and a guy like Baba who can get in foul trouble, and we don't know what's going to happen with AJ Smith if he's going to return. But the fact that they have 4 guys that can score and can score well and can really hurt you is big time, and they're certainly exceeding expectations. Kyle, my New Year's resolution for this team was to win the games that you should win. They did that. And then we saw where we had a measuring stick game, albeit against a Memphis team that's not nearly what they were last year. They went down there, given the circumstances. Jordan Mason misses a shot at the end where they had a chance to send it to overtime. I get it. It's a loss, and it sucks because that could have moved them to 4-0 in the conference and a massive road win given what was going on with them. But I do come away from last night encouraged. Again, you touched on a place they haven't won in 10 years. It's a place they haven't won in a decade. To go there, to keep it close, they won the games they should. They were right up there with the team that talent-wise stacks up with anybody or is the best team in this conference solely on talent and pedigree. I liked what I saw. They have a good test at home, an emotional day, the first home game back. They have some rest, reset themselves a little bit, It's against a good team in FAU, one of the better ones they'll play in this conference. Sunday's going to be another measuring stick game for them. And we'll see. And then they go on the road, and I know you got to go on the road, but you're going to get a Charlotte at home. You play UTSA, who stinks on the road. You have another opportunity to continue to stack wins against teams that you should beat. But honestly, for me, Kyle, so far, so good for them in conference play. I know the win streak came to an end, but so good, so far, so good. And you have to come away feeling a lot better than you did when the season started. A lot of people had them ranked last. We had them ranked 9, just above the cut line in the conference tournament. Seems like a team that's going to finish above that for me.
Yeah, and me as well. Like I said, Cope, I know there's another team you're probably chomping at the bit to talk about here. I am too, but I picked Temple first because I want to let you get to this team as well, and then we can maybe get to some of the other ones as well. But why don't you let us know what you're thinking?
Yeah, let's just get Villanova off the bat here. The one team that's staring down the barrel at a tournament bid and breaking our streak here in the Big Five, but we got to get them out of the way first. 14-3 after a loss to Creighton. I was there at the Finn. Didn't play with that urgency for a full 40 minutes like they needed to. The second half defensively was abysmal. Creighton shoots 18-27 from the field, 15 of 19 from 2. They didn't light them up from 3. They didn't just make a 3-point barrage or break the game open. 15 of 19 from 2. Got anything they wanted inside the 3-point line. The middle pick and roll was killing them. They had some guys make some good shots, but 15 of 19 in the second half. And for the game, Kyle, their quartet of Austin Swartz, Blake Harper, Josh Dix, Jason Green, 40 points from that group right there. Austin Swartz just was killing them. 3 straight mid-ranges in the second half from pretty much the same spot. It just wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough here defensively, and Creighton made him pay in the second half. Caden Lewis, again, 20 points and 7 assists in that game. Single digits from Bryce Lindsey, just kind of looked lost for the first time all year. Didn't play up to his standards, 0 for 3 from 3-point range, but they bounced back, Kyle. Close win on the road at Marquette. That's a landmine you needed to avoid, and they did. Caden Lewis led the team in scoring for the 4th time in the season. Dropped 20 points again. How about the 3rd game this year, Kyle? I know he had 7 assists against Creighton, but Marquette, he had 8 assists. That was the 3rd time of the year he's done that. Pretty damn good. 14 from Matt Hodge, and then, hey, Devin Askew, 13 points off the bench in this game. He had another good game against Providence where they shot very, very well. Tyler Perkins brought him home a little bit. And although Providence scored a lot, scored 82, they shot the ball well. It was a win. It was a road win against the Providence team that is not really on the cut line. It looks like it's going to be another really disappointing season. Unfortunately, at the dunk under Kim English, but they win 88-82. Probably not a great recipe for success. We're trying to outscore everybody every game, but they have the shooting and the horses to be able to do it. But it was a good win nonetheless. And here you are, Kyle. You're 5-1 in conference play now. You're 14-3 overall. Johnny's on Saturday night. There's not many, big time quad 1 and 2 opportunities and big time resume needle movers in this conference, but one is coming Saturday. They're still St. John's still ranked 18 in Ken Palm. They're 12-5, 5-1 in the conference, with their only loss being at home against Providence. Very puzzling result, quite honestly. When you look at who else they've lost to. Home against Alabama, they scored 96. They still lost. Lost to Iowa State, who I know they lost last night and got trounced at Allen Fieldhouse, but the number 2 ranked team going into one of the hardest places to play in the country.
Loses at Allen Fieldhouse.
It's like a 93% win rate for Bill Self when you're there. It's like you can't. They lost. The fact of the matter is they lost. It's hard for you to ever say. And that Kansas team isn't ranked, but it's really hard to ever, in the least bit, fault somebody for going to Allen Fieldhouse and losing. I mean, it's an impossible place to win. But besides Providence, I mean, in Auburn, 34 in Ken Palm, they've started to slide a little bit with a loss the other night. Kentucky, no, that's not great. But, I mean, you lose to Alabama and Iowa State. This just St. John's team is 4. Look, those are 4 wins they would have loved to have to move the needle for a resume for them. But it's not like they lost by games here. It's a big-time opportunity. You need to crash the glass. Villanova got destroyed on the glass last year when I went up to the Garden. They won at the Finn. I believe you might have been there for that. Were
Which
you?
one?
When they played St. John's at Finneran
I
Pavilion?
was.
Yes, you were there. I was not.
Great game. Great game. They stood in their head defensively that game. St. John's tried to shoot a bunch of threes and it was working for like a couple minutes and then it didn't because they were like a 30% 3-point team last year.
Yeah, they got overzealous.
Great team.
They started thinking they could make them all. And that was after they had strung together a bunch of wins too. I'm going to look at their schedule here, but they had I got to look at St. John because they were like playing like at a pace where it was like they're just not going to lose. Like they're just going to beat everybody. They had won 9 in a row. They just won at UConn. Like had beaten Marquette, beat Xavier in overtime. They had just beaten Villanova at the Garden. Like it's like they couldn't lose. Like that was like an unbeatable team who just came off a giant win at UConn and then Nova beat them. But regardless, have to rebound. This group is going to crash the glass. And if a guy like Duke Bennett is in foul trouble, like you could have an issue against Zuby Ejiofor and Dylan Mitchell and these guys. But a great opportunity coming from Villanova, Kyle. Bounce back after the Creighton win. But a big time opportunity. I think Villanova is a good team. I happen to think, Kyle, that they're a very good team. We got a litmus test, measuring stick game, if you will, because it's these games. They obviously the loss to BYU and to Michigan. And there's really not many other losses on the schedule to talk about. Only one more besides that. But let's see how we stack up here. Having besides Creighton and Seton Hall away, like you played DePaul, you played Marquette, who's not very good. You played Providence. You've played a couple, but I don't really think the world of Butler. Now that we're going to get into the grind of the Big East play, but let's see where we are here. St. John's needs to win bad. They need to add wins to their resume. I think this Villanova team does too if they really want to separate themselves and show them that they're not just a 6 seed good, that they're better than that. But love the response after the Creighton loss. It was not good. The defense was not good. The response, Kyle, though, has been very good.
It has been very good indeed. Cope, I'm also, and I'm usually not very distracted on these when we're recording, but I'm going to crash out because Kyle Tucker signed with the Dodgers. And I was on Kyle Tucker watch because the Mets were a finalist. So that just happened. Breaking news in the Big Five pod.
Yeah, that's right. Steve Cohen said, "Let me know when you see the smoke."
Well, he saw the smoke, and everyone
turns out the smoke's for Devin Williams.
And listen, I like Devin Williams, but that's not the point here. The point here is everyone was saying he was going to go to the Blue Jays and the Mets because the Mets had the highest short-term offer. The Blue Jays were going to give him the long-term offer. The obvious answer was always the Dodgers. I kept telling people that. The lockout's going to go crazy.
Start talking about another team. Nobody cares about the Mets.
All right, that's disrespectful. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's disrespectful.
You just said you don't want to go an hour 10. You're bringing the friggin' Mets in this.
Am I not allowed to crash out every once in a while? It's a valid crash out.
Whatever. You should be more mad at the fact that, $250 million Juan Soto came to the team and he didn't make the playoffs. But
we're not talking about that right now. Anyway, so that happened. We're gonna get back to it. Villanova team's good. They're gonna make the tournament. They're gonna end the streak. It would have to be disastrous for them to not at this point. They're a very good team, Cope, and I like this team a lot. They shoot the ball from 3 well. I don't know who just rang the doorbell at my fiance's parents' house, but someone just did. Maybe their depth isn't quite as what we thought it was going into the season, especially after the Tafar Kapari departure. But I like this team a lot. They're solid. Caden Lewis is really coming into his own and becoming a superstar. Maybe the scoring numbers aren't off the chart, but he can run the offense like we haven't seen in a little bit here at Villanova. So very cool to see. Winning at Providence, I think, is it's a solid result. It's hard to win on the road in conference play. Same thing with Marquette, and that's a further trip. The second furthest trip? It's probably the second furthest trip they're going to make. Creighton. I don't know which one's actually further, but I think they're both kind of in the same realm. I think Creighton's further, but regardless, nobody wants to go to Creighton. That place is a house of horrors. But they're going to have their work cut out for them, too, and the Big East as well. Obviously, St. John's is a tough team still, even though they haven't had the year we thought they were going to. And that one's at Xfinity Mobile Arena. And then they've got Georgetown midweek next week. They're at UConn, which I was looking to go to. It's a little bit further away from Long Island than I thought it was at Hartford. But that's going to be obviously a very tough one. Connecticut's a national title favorite. Not the favorite, but they're among them. A very, very good team. So they have their work cut out for them, Cope. But listen, right now, Ken Palm has them projected 23-8. That's a tournament team. That's a
Absolutely.
top 6 seed in the tournament, most likely, coming from the Big East. So, again, we're going to knock on wood. We're going to cross our fingers that this streak that some people could say was blamed on us, just because when we started this podcast, no team has made the tournament. We're hoping to end that streak. Cope, any teams you want to talk about that maybe have not lived up to consistent play that we thought? Actually, hold on. There was one more I want to talk about real quick. Maybe we don't have to go quite as long on them, but the one that played the night of this recording, the Drexel Dragons, because they're on a streak as well, and I think that needs to be recognized. They started conference play 0-3. Now they're back to 3-3 with wins over Stony Brook, William & Mary, and then at Monmouth on the night of us recording this, 73-51. Cope, the last 3 games, they let up 37 points, 58 points, 51 points. They're really turning up the stove there. Defensively, their offense has been a little bit better as well. Top 63-point shooting team in the country. Listen, and 2 of those 3 teams are around the same or a little bit worse than them, but the William & Mary win at home is a very impressive one as well. We called out this Drexel team and said, hey, we need a little more on offense. I said Victor Panos needs to get a little bit more involved. It's probably been around the same, but I think there's been some improvement offensively. I haven't actually gotten my eyes on those games because I haven't been there, but I'm curious to see if any of those usage stats and anything like that has changed. But listen, they turn up the defensive effort instead, which we love. So I do want to give a shout out to Drexel and let you, Cope, go on them as well. We couldn't not mention a 3-game win streak to get them back to 500 in conference play.
Yeah, absolutely. Big time response after starting 0-3. But again, the hardest road trip in the league, going to Charleston and UNC Wilmington. And then guess what? As a reward, you get to come back and open up at home against Hofstra, who beat Pittsburgh, who beat Syracuse, who's got Cruz Davis and Preston Edmeade, a true freshman, as good a mid-major guard duo as you'll see in the game. Guys can flat out score. Cruz Davis, one of the leading scorers in the country, literally one of the best players in the mid-major ranks. They kept it close then. They came back. But to rattle off the 3 wins they did, the lowest effective field goal percentage for a team they let up against Stony Brook. They turned that around against, a William & Mary team that had lost a couple games coming into that one, but really was a darling in the mid-major ranks. They beat them. And then tonight, Kyle, just an utter domination of Monmouth in West Long Branch. I mean, holy smokes, to shoot the ball as well as they did. It was a 19-19 tie. At halftime, it's 38-19 with a 19-0 run for the Dragons to end the half. And then just to dominate them. Over 50% from the three-point line, assisted on 18 of 25 baskets. A good game for Shane Blakey, a good game for Eli Beard, a good game for Josh Reed. Making shots, defending, showing off the length that they have. A very, very good response from Drexel to rattle off 3 straight. They had it's still with they didn't have to replace a lot of guys. The quality and the importance of the guys they had to replace was big time. They're starting to gel now and figure it out. This is really critical to see a game like this from Shane Blakeney to shoot the ball so well because they need his offensive prowess. He was not that efficient the first handful of games. He was very good tonight. Drexel was good. And look, they played in a couple rock fights here as kind of as per usual with the Zach Spiker team, but a very impressive response here, Kyle, to win 3 straight. They're going to take it into Towson on Monday on Martin Luther King Day. Struggled get right off the bat. Towson's in the middle of a game at Charleston tonight, but Towson, struggled right off the bat. Going to be a big game for them. 3 straight games, Kyle. They played right down to the wire with Towson last year. It'd be huge if they could go on the road, win there, and all of a sudden that's 4 in a row. You put yourself 4-3 in conference play after starting 0 in the first 3.
Exactly, and that kind of resilience is I mean, what everyone looks for, of course, but like it's and they had a tough draw to start conference play, Cope. And I was looking forward to what I'm about to say after this point. But at Charleston, at UNC Wilmington, home against Hofstra, who I think you mentioned 3-point game. In that one, it was a close game, so they very well could be 4-2. The Hofstra team, I think, will win the conference. I think they're a very, very good team, but. This is all you can ask for to bounce back like this after that tough stretch and hopefully build up momentum when they face those teams again. And I don't know how many of them they are facing again, but are they facing any of them again? I'm looking at the schedule right now.
No Charleston and UNC Wilmington. They are going to do.
They are Hofstra the last game of the season. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to see Towson as well. Like it's with Delaware leaving. They're I think I'm
somehow wearing their sweatshirt right now. My fiance went to Delaware, so I got some Delaware merch.
Get the Conference USA patch on the side. My guys and Stephen Baggell and Riley, the two of them were at Kennesaw State, Delaware, and it just like shattered my brain.
It just doesn't make any sense.
They were going to that
about 11 months ago. When I was still working with the unit and it wasn't so far from Newark, I went to the Drexel Delaware game at the Bob with Shelby, and great time, great regional conference rivalry that no longer exists and will never exist again, most likely.
I think it will. It couldn't happen this year. I think Drexel Delaware
in the conference
won a conference. No,
the conference.
I think both programs still want to.
Yeah. That was both of their closest opponents in the conference. Obviously, Drexel still has some opponents that aren't so far. I mean, Monmouth isn't so far. Stony Brook isn't like insanely far.
That's regional enough. That's regional.
William and Mary, I guess, but
regional is not Delaware playing New Mexico State. That's
exactly
1,800 miles away.
No,
that's not.
It's not them playing Kennesaw State. It's
yeah.
We will not finish this episode if we go off on a conference realignment tangent. We can get that another time, but
it's Conference USA. It's not Conference Northeast. Maybe it fits a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what, Cope? One of our other conferences that one of our teams is in is the same way. The American, and I know that's the name. And there's schools from all over the map, but now I feel like it's half of it's in Texas, and then the rest is kind of elsewhere. I don't know, man. We could go on about this, but regardless, happy for Drexel to get those 3 wins, and they got a tough one at Towson on Monday. I'm sure we'll be tweeting about that one. We won't be there, but we'll be tweeting about it. Cope, we'd also be remiss to talk about another team that also has a 3-game win streak, and then maybe we can hit on LaSalle and Penn at the end here. But without further ado, St. Joe's, who started their conference play 0-2 with a really bad loss to a really good St. Louis team, and a close loss at Davidson where they only scored 56. Now they rattle off 3 in a row. Overtime win against Duquesne on January 7th. A road win against Richmond by 2 points on Sunday. And then just yesterday, of us recording this on Wednesday, the 14th, beating St. Bonaventure at home, the game you were at, 68-64. My New Year's resolution for this Hawks team was for them to change their offensive identity, shoot a little bit less threes because they are 357th in the country right now in 3-point percentage at 27.5%, and they were right around that when I made this resolution. They have not changed that, but they are winning games. I think in the previous 2 games they combined for 63s. They had 24. This is attempts, by the way, and they had 24 attempts against Bonaventure as well. So they haven't changed it, but they figured something out. The Duquesne game, they showed a lot of resilience, winning in overtime. Richmond on the road as well, and Bonaventure. So maybe they just changed the fabric of their team, and now they are resilient, and now they can pull out these games that maybe they hadn't against Coastal Carolina and some others earlier in the year, like Penn. Cope, you saw their last win. What do you think it is about this St. Joe's team that all of a sudden now is over 500 record in Atlantic 10 play?
Well, it wasn't won yesterday, and it wasn't won at Richmond. There was a team meeting. Aaron Bracey wrote about this in his column. He was at the game yesterday, did a really good job with that. But talking to Derek Simpson and Steve Donahue after the game, they had a meeting with the leadership council and the coaching staff. It was the 5 starters. It was Jaden Glover, Derek Simpson, Justice Ajabo, Dacier, Anthony Finkley, and Kafik Myers. They met in a room with all the assistants and Steve. It was an idea, Steve said, by Chris Flegler, the assistant, that they hadn't had one of these leadership council meetings in a while. The vibe wasn't too good. They had lost the first 2 games in conference play. They have the meeting. They're honest with each other. They're open with each other. Derek Simpson was like, hey, be harder on us. Don't blow smoke up our ass. Like, critique us. What do we need to do better? Reinforce the good, but hold us accountable for the bad and critique us. They have been very resilient the last 3 games to win against Duquesne in overtime, to hold on to that win in Richmond, where they scored 42 in the first half and 25 in the second half, to pull that win out on the road against the team in Richmond that's actually been stacking wins and was 12-4 at the time, to hold them off, to win that game, make the free throws when they had, and then win last night, where they were winning the whole game. Bonaventure comes at this crazy offensive flurry. Caden Charles for them at 17 points, all in the second half. At one point, they're down 7 in the second half. They're down 6 with 2 minutes left. 2 3-pointers from Jaden Glover Toscano, 2 foul shots from Derek Simpson. The sequence at the end, Kyle. We know this can be a good defensive team with the athletes they have. Great sequence at the end. It is petrifying, Kyle, when at the end of the game, Mark Schmidt's got the clipboard looking to go ahead or tie the game. That's probably good as you probably don't want to see many other guys on the opposite sideline, 30 seconds left, trying to plan for a Mark Schmidt out of bounds play. Ball gets swung a couple times right in front of me, sitting on the bait on the end line opposite Bonaventure's bench. Jaden Glover makes a huge block. Then call timeout, run another play. Derek Simpson gets a deflection on the other end, and then Bonaventure didn't really get a great look at a 3 from a guy they probably didn't want shooting it. But to make a defensive stand like that, to make the buckets when they had to, the resilience, Kyle, is what sticks out. That's what sticks out about this Hawks team. The first 2 games, I mean, it's easy, Kyle, to almost like curl up in a ball when season's not going like you want. There's the transition, and Steve talked about it last night. There's so much transition and change that this group has gone under. You know, there's the dismissal of Deuce. And with all that, Kyle, they started out 0-2 in conference play, coming off the loss against Coastal Carolina. They've now turned that into 3 wins, and they have a winning record in conference. It says a lot about the guys to continue to grind at this and to put their feelings aside, have the meeting that they did, and come out better. The resilience is very impressive. Really impressed with these guys.
Yeah, me too. And that's what I was saying. Like, I think changing the fabric and having that meeting and saying, listen, we can still accomplish something this year. It's impressive, and hopefully they continue to.
Just let me say one thing, is I feel like we haven't really called this guy's name a whole lot this year. We'll talk Derek Simpson, who, by the way, clap it up for him.
1,000 points.
Not only hit 1,000, Kyle's done nothing but be steady and be the senior veteran presence that this team has needed this season. So not only want to shout out him, we don't really say Dacier Haskins' name enough. 16 points, Kyle. Had a double-double, grabbed 11 boards as well, 3 assists, 2 steals. For this guy to be doing what he's doing, he's slimmed down. He's in such better shape than he was last year. He hit a big 3. He competes on the defensive end. He made some good cuts and had 2 dunks to start the game out yesterday. We don't say Dacier Haskins' name enough. And I think the biggest compliment that a guy like him can receive, even if he's not getting the hoopla and the praise, and we're talking about Jaden Glover Toscano, Steve Donahue just keeps saying he's an everyday guy. Same dude on the bus, same dude in practice, same dude at the game, same dude in study hall, same dude in class. An everyday guy like that deserves some praise for us. We don't say Dacier Haskins' name enough.
Shout out to Dacier Haskins. Yeah, I mean, in professional sports world, you'd call that a 16-game player. And referring to the playoffs, that's what Dacier Haskins is. I know St. Joe's isn't having the season that they thought right now, but he's showing up. He's there. He's consistent. We love guys like that. So shout out to Dacier Haskins. Good mention, Cope. All right, real quick, we will touch on some of the results from LaSalle and Penn just to wrap us up here, maybe give a couple quick thoughts and then read the schedule, even though we kind of have a little bit for some of the teams and wrap up here. So we try to keep it within the hour range. LaSalle, since the last time we recorded, lost to George Mason on New Year's Eve, lost to George Washington on January 3rd, won at Rhode Island on January 7th, lost to St. Louis on January 10th, and then just yesterday of us recording, lost at Richmond 74-53. So it's been a rough stretch for them, a 1-5 stretch since the last time we recorded. And then for Penn, since the last time we recorded, a win against NJIT on New Year's Eve, a loss at Princeton, 78-76 on January 5th, which, of course, Cope, I'm sure you'll mention, gave Princeton the lead in the all-time series for the first time since 1903, which is absurd. And then winning at Brown, a game I was at on this past Saturday, 81-73, good bounce back victory. Ethan Roberts is healthy now, and working his way, or fully work his way back. He did a 28 points in that game against Brown, so I think he might be back, Cope. But any thoughts on either of these teams real quick before we wrap up? I know obviously LaSalle has been on a rough streak, and not that we don't want to talk about them, but it's a little hard to. We don't want to harp on how bad that the results have been because it hasn't been pleasant, and then Penn just has only played a couple games. So, any thoughts on these two?
Yeah, I'm going to touch real quick on LaSalle, and then I'll touch on the Penn Princeton game and some of the facts of that one. But look, I was at the LaSalle Mason game. I was at the LaSalle St. Louis game. I saw the vision with the play style with Darius. Look, they competed and played very hard and were up for like 94%, 95% of that game against George Mason. That didn't really take the lead until there was 2 minutes left. They got downhill. They shot free throws. They shot free throws against St. Louis. They didn't make that many, but they got there. But you saw the rebounding, the toughness. It's great to have Jaden Johnson back for the Mason game and see his debut. They need a guy like him to be the straw that stirs the drink, that even though he's not a three-point shooter, be the guy that can dish. They just need a maestro, and he's going to be big time this year, and I'm excited to see him continue to integrate himself into the LaSalle team. And then against St. Louis, Kyle, the final score was probably not indicative of the game result with LaSalle, fighting the way they did in the second half. Josh Schertz even said that, we did nothing good defensively in the second half, but that LaSalle team had St. Louis plays a very good 9-man rotation. A bunch of those guys were in foul trouble. They were getting to the free throw line. They were getting rebounds. The problem is, Kyle, they played against an offensive juggernaut that gets to the rim, has plenty of outside shooting, and when you have Robbie Avila on the court, they can space you out and just terrorize you. Because as good as the shooters are, Kyle, they want to get to the rim, and their whole offense is based around the rim. It's not shoot outside to open up inside. It's pound the driving lanes, get to the rim, to then kick out to all the players we have. If you remember Brady Dunlap from St. John's, who terrorized Nova a couple years ago, that guy terrorized LaSalle when I was there on Saturday. This St. Louis team, Kyle, we love KenPom. They just put the 2-point field goal attempt distance stat out. This St. Louis team not only shoots very well from 3, they shoot well from 2, which has always been a staple under Josh Schertz. They're taking their average 2-point attempt, Kyle, comes within 4 feet of the basket. They get to the rim, get putbacks, get dump offs, get cuts with a great passing big man like Robbie Avila. Look, I'm not blaming LaSalle at all for the St. Louis win because that St. Louis team is very good, can push for an 8 or 9 seed. And I talked to Dr. John Giannini after the game, Kyle, who was calling the game, and he said to me, this might be the best A-10 team since those Dayton teams, Toby Toppin. It is a very, very good St. Louis team that plays a very good 9-man rotation with no drop-off. You will see that team come March barring a disaster, and they're going to give somebody a headache when they get there, Kyle. And then touching on Penn, was at the Princeton game at Jadwin. I think Jadwin rocks. You can argue with the wall if you don't think so. I think Jadwin is awesome. Good first half from Penn. It really was a good offensive game the whole time. Like, they go up 8 points at halftime. Jack Stanton from Princeton made a layup right before the half, which it felt like a momentum swing and play. Not something you can quantify, but it felt like that was something that was huge going into the half because Princeton could not make a shot early to start. Ethan Roberts got involved early. AJ Levine has responded very well. He had a good game. The problem is, Kyle, Princeton made their last 2 shots of the first half and made the first 16 of the second half. I've never seen anything like it. They scored on 18 straight possessions that went almost 12 minutes in the second half, Kyle, without missing a shot. It was an unreal offensive performance, but Penn stuck in there. Penn, 19 of 19 from the free throw line in that game, and because they continued to shoot the ball well, and even if the lead got to 12, 13, whatever it was, they made their free throws. They just hung in there enough that they had a shot to win this game at the end. Fran McCaffrey said they should have went to the press earlier because they were getting turnovers off and it helped them stay in the game. But a wild Penn Princeton game in a series that's had a lot of them. And Princeton now leads that series 127-126. Never happened in the 113-year series that they've played, which shout out to Mike Mahoney, absolutely elite SID. So I just got updated for an award. What'd you say?
123.
Sorry, math's hard.
It's okay. I know I'm not good at it either.
That's why I was a sport management major. I failed accounting the first time. I had to take it a second. Anyway, shout out Mike Mahoney for this stat. This series goes back to 1903. Princeton now with 14 straight wins. This is the longest win streak in the history of the series. That started, Kyle, at some building called St. James Hall at 38th and Market that's no longer there. Penn winning the first game on Valentine's Day, by the way, in 1903, 24-14. How about that for a basketball score? So, bunch of fun little tidbits. Guys like us who are sickos live for this stuff. A crazy game in the Penn-Princeton series, but caught 14 in a row for Princeton, the most ever. They now lead this series. I don't think it's been updated yet, but that scoreboard in the back of the Palestra is going to read Princeton as a leader for the first time ever.
It was not updated when I was there on Saturday.
Got to be on that, man. Yeah. Those facility guys are great. When I worked there, they're awesome. They should have been the first. That should have been the first thing on the list.
It's probably a disappointing one, Cope, to be honest with you. Also, this series, and you pointed this out to me a little bit ago, but this series predates the Palestra by like 25 years.
Yeah, by like 2 decades.
Wild.
That's how old it is.
It's wild. And the Palestra, obviously, is in its 99th year, I think. So
hitting 100 next year.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely insane. Hopefully they do some type of big celebration for that. That's something we'll keep tabs on next year.
Stay tuned. One's coming.
One's coming. All right. Cope, we're going to go over the schedule real quick here and then final thoughts and sign off. We mentioned some of these games, but LaSalle hosting St. Bonaventure's on Saturday at 2:30. Penn will be at Dartmouth at 3, and Villanova hosting St. John's at 8 on Saturday at Xfinity Mobile Arena. We mentioned Temple hosting FAU at 12 on Sunday for Alumni Day, and then on Martin Luther King Day on Monday, Drexel will be at Towson, Penn will be at Harvard, and you will be at this game, Cope. St. Joe's going down to the Siegel Center to play VCU. Oh, God, you put your Broncos hat on. See, I went full screen for the calendar, so I didn't see it. Oh, God. Anyway, Tuesday they're off. Wednesday, LaSalle home against Dayton, First Responders Day. Villanova will be home against Georgetown at the Finn, and then Temple will be at Rice, and we'll probably record sometime in the middle of the end of next week. So we're not going to go over the next week's schedule. Yes, Cope, the Broncos play a home game at Mile High. God forbid something happens like the second to last divisional home game they played at Mile High. That would be such a shame. Any long passes in overtime potentially to sink them would be very much a shame. It's a cynic.
Wouldn't an 80-yard wouldn't a long pass on the first play of overtime to win the
That's
game
true.
for you? So that would probably stink.
Rest in peace to Demaryius Thomas.
Yes, rest in peace. Goated.
Yeah, Cope. Listen, it's a cool thing for you. I'm glad you got to experience this. I'm bitter because the last time the Jets made the playoffs, I was 11, and the last time they hosted a playoff game, I was 2.
Crazy.
So
it's big.
I'm a little jealous.
Need
of
this
course I'm a
bad.
little jealous. Patriots, no, they're not playing the Patriots yet. I'm sorry, they're playing the Bills. It's a tough matchup.
You can't ask for anything more if you're the Broncos. You get the Bills at home, who embarrassed you last year. All you got to do is win Saturday. And then you get to host the AFC Championship game at your place with a chance to go to the Super Bowl, which, by the way, Kyle, if you remember, 10 years ago, the Super Bowl was hosted in San Francisco, as it will this year. And the Broncos went on to embarrass the Panthers and MVP Cam Newton.
All right, don't air quote it. He was the MVP of the league that year. He was
and they made him look like a
phenomenal.
Fool. I mean,
it was an all-time defense.
They just beat the crap out of him for 4 quarters. But
also, potentially, Cope. Potentially, the last time that they hosted an AFC Championship was against the Patriots. It could happen again.
Could happen. I remember that game too. That was the Owen Daniels game.
That's a name I haven't heard probably in
Daniels,
10 years.
two quick touchdowns, man. Fried Jamie Collins, and I probably haven't heard that name either.
I haven't heard that name in a while. Probably he went to the Lions, right?
Yeah, Browns for a little bit too.
Yeah.
It's actually on UNC staff with Belichick, but yeah, need it bad. Can't answer anything more for the Broncos, but I'm just worried that this might be number 17's year of destiny. Little worried that might be the case.
Not that I want to ramble anymore here, but here's a question for you. Why wait till the end of the episode to put it on? You obviously wanted to put it on.
Well, it was like staring at me on my like hat hanger over here, and I realized that, like, you know, look, I was going to go over the schedule, and the thing is, I'm not going to be at Bonnie's LaSalle because it overlaps. It overlaps with the game, so I'm going to be watching the Broncos game somewhere. Very much TBD on St. John's Nova if there's space for me. Sunday, hope to see you at FAU. I was going to talk to Scott. Like I promised you, I was going to talk to schedule that you were touching on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We already went over the schedule when we went over all the teams.
FAU Temple. But I have a very special one on MLK Day. I have a very special one on Monday. I am taking a road trip. I'm hitting the road for the first time this year. One of 2 or like 3 road trips where I'm going to stay overnight. I'm headed to Richmond. I'm going to experience the Siegel Center for the first time. And I'm going to experience those St. Joe's Hawks going up against Phil Martelli Jr., who I was lucky enough to speak to today. We'll have a story. Very excited for that. I know you've been to the Siegel Center kind of during a break, maybe not the rowdiest it could be, but VCU's good once again. Place should be amped. Phil Martelli Jr. told me the place is pretty much sold out. I only got a handful of tickets left, so very much looking forward to going to the Siegel Center. But a big game with a big storyline as well. So I will be I'll be in the capital city of Virginia.
Love
that,
it.
Kyle. That will be a late night. I'm playing as Temple FAU, get in the car. It's I-95, pretty much straight shot.
Yeah, and I've done that drive too, like you said. It's not crazy long, but it's a little long. Maybe make a stop, get some food somewhere, get some gas. But Cope, Siegel Center is a treat. I recommend anyone watching or listening definitely try to get down there at some point for a game. And I think a lot of this has to do with John Rothstein tweeting about it a lot, but one of the more newer checklist bookmark places you got to get to in college basketball. And there's plenty that I have not been to yet that I need to, but I'm glad I crossed that one off my list when they played Penn last year. So happy for you. Definitely enjoy it. I know you're going to have a good story on Phil Martelli Jr. and then, of course, on the game as well when you get down there. So enjoy it. And thank you all for listening, of course, and tuning in as always. If you want to find us on social media, check out our Instagram, our TikTok, and our Twitter at Big5Pod. Make sure you check us out on our audio-only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. Of course, on YouTube if you're watching us. And that's all we got for this one. I'm Kyle. He's Cope, and we'll see you next time.